Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you taking your time to join us to talk about STEM education. If you haven't been to a She Talks Tech before, put your hand up. Well, welcome. I love to see a room full of newbies. That's super exciting to us. This is a session that we run once per quarter, and it's focused all on bringing together the women in our community to give them spotlight to talk about the incredible work that they do, whether it's in science, technology, entrepreneurship, anything adjacent to the work that we do here at the Accelerator Center. My name is Tabitha. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and External Relations at the AC. I have an incredible team with me here today. AC staff, put your hand up real quick. Give them a round of applause. They make this possible. Tonight, we're really excited to talk about STEM education and the importance of education and representation, particularly for young people as they develop and choose their careers, hopefully in STEM or entrepreneurship. So, as I always do at the beginning of these events, quick show of hands. I want to know who's in the room. Are you an entrepreneur? Good. Are you a business professional, we'll say? Any students in the room? A couple. Anyone who doesn't fit those categories and wants to just yell out, who are you? I see a hand, but you don't have to tell me. It's okay. Perfect. A developer. Yes, we love to hear that. Amazing. Well, thank you all for coming. We're excited to have an incredible panel. They're going to introduce themselves, but I have the pleasure of introducing you to our wonderful moderator, Angela Zhao from Tories. Tories is an incredible partner of the Accelerator Center. They provide wonderful support for our entrepreneurs. And tonight, they're going to lead our conversation about STEM entrepreneurship. So you're welcome to stay after to have a little bit of a chat with these incredible panelists or a chat with any of the AC staff members as well. So without further ado, I will hand it to Angela. For you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Zhao. Thank you, Tabitha, for introducing me. I'm an associate lawyer at Tories LLP, which is a law firm in Toronto. I personally do a lot of work with commercial contracting for technology solutions. So in my job, I get to find out lots of really interesting things about technology development. I get to learn a lot from technological teams. I like to say I'm not a technologist. I'm just a technology lawyer. I think Tyler as well from my firm is here, so if you guys would like to chat with us, please do. I'd like to pass it over to my panelists now, who are going to tell you a little bit about what they do and how they got here.
Yeah. So my name is Ibukun Ilebute. I'm the founder of the STEMite Zone Fair, where we are nurturing the next generation of African innovators using science fairs as a launch pad. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Select, where we're using nano solutions to solve women's biggest health problems. And currently, we're tackling being able to have a replacement for pap smears, a passive replacement for pap smears for early cervical cancer screening and STDs. So and my background so far has literally been influenced a lot by moving. I've lived in over 3 continents, and that has influenced, my STEM journey. Also, just being able to find people along the path who have inspired me, and so I do what I do today to inspire people like myself. And it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm Dinah Davis. When I was in high school, I really loved mathematics. So when I went to my career counselor to find out what I should do as a job, he told me I should be a math teacher. So I did do that because I guess I was kind of naive and I didn't really know what else to do. But I very quickly learned that I didn't really like other people's children. And I really, really loved mathematics. And so that led me into picking up a course in computer science, which just kind of opened up this world of how to bring mathematics to like a real world place. And through co-op, I discovered cryptography and cybersecurity. So I went and did my master's in that and was really fortunate to be in a fairly early group at BlackBerry. I believe I did join on their 20th anniversary, but it took them a while to get going. And I worked as a security software developer there on the bleeding edge of mobile security for about 8 years and transitioned into leadership over that time. And then I worked at a few other places, and most recently worked at Arctic Wolf, which is a local cybersecurity company, for 7.5 years. I started there when the whole company was 30 people, and the software team was 15, and I led their R&D team for the next 5 years, and we grew it to 100 people, and we unicorned. And then I worked in other capacities inside that company as well, helping grow the R&D team to 500 people. So from 100 to about 500 in 3 years. Did I mention there was a pandemic in there? So anyway, we had a really good time there, and I retired from my corporate life about 1.5 years ago. And right now I focus mostly on the publication I created in 2016, which is called Code Like a Girl, which is about amplifying the voices of women in technology.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sherry Shannon Vanstone. It's great to see each of you here. My journey started in mathematics, too, also. I'm a little older than you, so we won't go into that. And it was interesting when I was in high school. I really wanted to be a teacher, too. So, yes.
I know, but
yeah. Yes, and then that got in the way, yeah. So I was mentioning to someone, I also have a degree in Spanish. So I decided that I was going to teach one of those, and then I didn't do either one of those. I said, you know what, I need to do something else with mathematics, and I had someone from the university encouraged me to go on and get a graduate degree in mathematics, which opened up the door for me to a lot of different areas. In first place, I was trying to get a job in mathematics after getting a graduate degree, and they wanted to send me back to become an engineer. And I said, you know, we make fun of engineers. Mathematicians do. Right? Sorry, engineers, but we do. So it was good. I found a job that they wanted me to do mathematics, and it was with the U.S. government as a cryptologic mathematician. So I wasn't a cryptologic mathematician when I went there. I was just a mathematician. And so I got the training, and the job. It was really so interesting. I spent 6 years there, but I decided I wanted to do something different. For some reason, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so leaving the government, and I went to Silicon Valley to a startup. And they said, what do you want to do? And I go, I'll be a head of Asia Pacific sales. So guess what? I did that. And you know what? My degree in mathematics opened so many doors for me there. I would go to Japan, and I traveled by myself, and go to Japan, and they just really respected me and listened to me. I mean, they thought it was weird that a woman was talking like this and being a mathematician. But it opened up the doors for me, and that led me to Canada to come to a competitor of the company that I was working with in Silicon Valley, and it was Certicom. And that became the supplier of all the security to BlackBerry. And so that was great. I was able to use my cryptographic background and security, and then I became involved with the founder of the company, and we got married, and so I had to do something else. So anyway, we later left BlackBerry, and we started a third company called TrustPoint Innovation, which was here in Waterloo. In Waterloo, we're in Kitchener, I know. So yes, and so again, that was a company in information security for the driverless car. And what was quite interesting, and that I sold that company in 2017. I had a non-compete, so I said, what am I going to do? I should have called you, Dinah, and learned how to retire, but I couldn't, so I just rewired and started another company, Profound Impact, we're a data analytics and AI company. So the journey of, and being able to get a degree in mathematics in the time that I did it, and that I had a choice, teaching is wonderful, and I think I would have been a great teacher, but being able to become a cryptologic mathematician just set me up for success in the business world, because information security, I can't even say the word, and cybersecurity are so important today, and it gets better and better as we go on. I do want to say something about my work with Perimeter Institute. I worked there as a volunteer for 10 years to head up their Immunity Council, and it was to raise funds for different projects, such as research chairs. The program I believe you're in too is for you're getting your PhD, it's right, and so that led me to be able to work with young women in mathematics and physics, and I was awarded an honorary doctorate from Western University for my work with Perimeter. Yes.
Hi, I'm Talsha. Yeah, I don't know. It's a confusing spelling, but that's the pronunciation. I'm a PhD student in Perimeter, also on this scholarship that Shari was mentioning for like Emmy Noether and Emerging Talent. I'm going into my final year of my PhD. I'm doing gravity, so like black holes and gravitational waves. I came here from Ireland, where I grew up, for my master's and my PhD. I did my bachelor in Ireland. I also wanted to say, for like younger people who might be here, I didn't always know that I wanted to do physics. I think I kind of knew that I liked maths and physics, but sort of ended up taking them and really enjoyed what I was doing, so just kept doing things, and I'm still enjoying it. So I also started a Women in Physics group in my university in Dublin, partly because I was really surprised by how sexist some of the other students were, and I, kind of naively thought I could fix it, but that was really interesting, and I think I got really interested in doing work for like women in physics, and I've stayed being involved in the Women in Physics group in Perimeter as well.
So I think based on those introductions, we've learned we have a whole sort of spectrum of career and choices, and how things have blended into different choices throughout people's lives and lifetimes and experiences at the start and at the end. So the next question that we want to go through is, unfortunately, there are some stereotypes about working in STEM, and so we wanted to confront those stereotypes and understand what are some misconceptions that the panelists have run into over their career, and what's it really like to work in the careers that they've chosen. Anyone can pick.
Okay, I can go. So the biggest stereotype that I would hit was that I wasn't technical enough. So as a engineering software development leader, I would often get told in more ways than one that I wasn't technical enough, even though I had bachelor's in mathematics, master's in mathematics, and 20 years of technology experience, 5 of those spent software development. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, there tends to be a bias out there that women aren't technical. So for that, I just say, I was gonna swear, but there's little children in here, so I'm not going to. That's silly. Doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't have any effect on how technical, how smart, how funny you are, right? But the bigger problem, I think, that feeds into that is there's this expectation that engineering leaders still code. Okay, well, that's also silly. Because so it's very typical too that some of the guys who are still in the business will still want to be coding while they're leading these engineering teams. And in my opinion, you should be hiring the smartest people you can to do the technical work so you can see the forest for the trees. If your head's down there coding, and because I didn't do that, I didn't go and code every day, then I would be labeled as not technical enough. But I think the way you overcome that is, you really show how your teams are delivering. Plus, really a company unicorned while I was leading their R&D team. So I feel like maybe that proved it. But it's a common thing that happens. So I would say in general, check yourself on any assumptions you're making about a person because of how they look.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think that, Ibukun, do you have anything that you want to add?
I want to hear what you have to say first.
I was just going to say, I think that it's great to hear from people with real experience about how they've overcome these things in their career and what it's really like, because a lot of the times we hear about stereotypes and we encounter them even in our real life, but it's often really encouraging to hear how those around us have chosen to overcome those and how they've mastered that and moved forward, because I think that our panel today really represents a group of women who have overcome those stereotypes that have been encountered. But does anybody else have any stories?
I will pipe in here. It was interesting when I decided to go on to graduate school. I was talking to one of the professors, one of my mathematics professors, and he was quite older, so I forgave him for what he said. He said, "Well, you're just going to graduate school to find a husband." I think, well, I didn't find one in undergrad, so maybe he might be right. So anyway, I thought it was just, I just couldn't even respond to it because I thought it was so asinine. And so it's those kind of things but that's somebody else putting a label on you, and you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to tune into that frequency. And so I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tune into that. But yes, of course you're going to, you know what? Everyone, no matter male or female, you go into a career, you're into a job, and you're really trying to do the best you can. There are people who try to pull you down. And so you just have to say, you know what? I'm not going to tune into that. I'm going to move on. I think we've had it, especially in technology and especially in coding, a little more stereotyping in that area. That's why we have to have events like this so that we can talk about it, so that we can try to do something about it, to change it. And again, I say this to everyone, and I have to say it to myself: pick your battles. Decide, if you can get offended by everything somebody says, there are things you should stand up for, but there's some things you just have to say, I'm not going to respond to that.
I had a really great boss who just told me, and it's a lesson I really had to learn, was be a duck and just let it wash off your back. It's not, you don't have to stick your head up above the water for every single thing. You got to learn how to be a duck sometimes. And that was some really good advice.
Yeah, I was going to share an experience. Before I actually do that, it's quite interesting because I did a bachelor's in biomedical engineering, biomedical and mechanical engineering. And there are certain times where, especially with the mechanical engineering classes, I'll be in the room, look around, and not only am I the only person of color, I'm also the only woman in the room. I know, not full attendance, but the fact that it looked like a full class, and that was the case. Kind of made me feel like it was very special that I chose the path that I did. And it just made me think, a little bit of pressure, but also just thinking in my head, I'm representing, and just want to be the best that I can. And I think that speaks volumes more than anything. The funny story was, so I worked for about a year back home in Nigeria. And, very culturally different from here. I was one of two female engineers in their field service engineering company for medical equipment and that kind of thing. And I'd gone to fix one of the equipment at a hospital with a male colleague. And usually we would wear the same shirts, like a uniform of sorts. And typically in Nigeria, when they see a man and a woman dressed the same, they would just assume you're a couple. And so I went over, we're setting up and everything, and the nurse who knew the male colleague but not me was like, hey, who's this? You brought your babe to work. Introduce her. And we both laughed. What the heck? But what she was fascinated that day, because I did the majority of the repairs that needed to happen that day, and she was embarrassed but also impressed. And in my mind, it was like I need to keep doing this. And I think just carrying that throughout my career, just be badass at it, and people would respect you for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your honesty. I think we have a next question for Ibukun, if you wouldn't mind continuing. You have been working to nurture the next generation of innovators across Africa, and you do that through lots of different ways. One of them is through science fairs, as well as Collect. And what challenges have you faced in that environment, and how would you sort of encourage the next generation?
Yeah, just to continue with what I was saying before and connecting to that question, I think to me, it's like there's a lot of work to do in that space. Like we're having conversations like this here, but like in terms of the big challenges back home, I'll speak through my experience because through the education system there. So I was there till I was would be the equivalent of grade 9, and just growing up, in an above average school. But we didn't have anything like science fairs or robotics or labs. If they were present, they were quite sparse, right? And so just coming here later on in my life and just comparing, like, why is that society not as innovative as here? And I began to understand the root of the disparities. And so that's one of the reasons why we started the science fair, was to fill that gap. And when we started, I started to look for partners locally, like back home, that I could, partner with. And I was quite impressed to see a lot of organizations that would run robotics and labs and stuff like that at schools, private schools mostly, or as like home tutoring type things, which only the middle and high class, people would be able to afford. And so what happens to the rest of the people who can't afford such services? And so with our science fairs, one of the big things we're doing is having just a quota where we're serving most of our science fair students would be from underserved communities. We're particular about that, as well as like having a female representation of at least 50%. So I mean, this is one way we're trying to serve that, right? And one other challenge is just culturally, because I realized that just having lived across, the reason why that society may not be as innovative is just culturally there's some barriers. And I tapped into my superpower as an artist. I didn't mention I'm a singer and songwriter. And so what we do is we write songs every year for the science fairs. And in my mind, it's like we're influencing the culture at a grassroots level. And so yeah, I would just like to speak to that and say, like, I don't think you have to choose if you are in touch with your artistic and scientific side. I think it influences the way you approach problems, and yeah, it should never be a barrier.
Well, it sounds like quite an innovative approach. I think that the next question leads in well to that, because you mentioned how important education is. And Dinah, you mentioned before your experience both as a teacher as well as launching Code Like a Girl. I was wondering if you could touch upon effective ways to inspire young girls to pursue STEM education and the role of role models in pursuing that.
Yeah, so when girls are around age 10, they're kind of at like the height of loving STEM and technology, basically because they don't really care what other people think of them. They just care about what they love, right? And what we notice is around the age 13, that drops off. And we actually call that the STEM cliff. And the reason it drops off is because your friends become one of the most important things to you as your teenage life grows and happens. And so if it is uncool in that group of friends to be interested in mathematics or science or whatever, then girls tend to leave it because they don't want to be uncool in their group of friends. And their friends just have so much power over them. But what we find is as women go into their 20s, that interest starts to pick up again. And the most common thing between kids or girls that are 10 years old and women in their 30s is that they don't care about what other people think. And so we find that women's level of interest in science, technology, and all those things is about the same in their 30s as it was when they were 10, because they've let go of all of that in between. So one of our biggest jobs as parents, teachers, people in the community is to get our girls over that STEM cliff. So I think I can claim success at this moment. My daughter is turning 16 in 2 days. Maybe get off the roads. She's coming. But she's in grade 11 and she's taking 4 sciences. And we did not lose that. But here's a few things that we did. One, when she was between 5 to 10 years old, I created dolls for her that was an Ada Lovelace doll, a Marie Curie doll, a Bessie Coleman doll. I wanted her to see and have these role models that weren't Barbie, that of these women that did amazing things. Another thing that I loved, if you have kids from 5 to 13, is the book series Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. Unbelievable. I gifted that book to so many people, my nephew, because boys need to see it too, right? It's not just about girls seeing it. Boys need to see that girls can be good at these things as well. Another thing we did was put her in a lot of STEM camps. So keeping that interest alive and in a place where maybe she wasn't even with her friends, so that she could find other friends who found it cool, even if that's how you keep it alive during the mid-teen years, right? And another great type of camp, if you can get your kids into it, is the maker clubs. I love it. And Waterloo has an amazing, KW itself has an amazing maker culture, and it just shows them how to work with their hands and that they can just build anything. So those are the main things. And then, the big thing about this is those young girls, but even women in their 20s and on, they can't be what they can't see. So that's why events like this are really important. You can see a successful, tech mogul, sold multiple companies. But just people who've done it, right? So that, you can do it too. And that's part of our job as we go through, is to be role models for people. It's why I fought for my titles, because inside the company I knew it wasn't that important, but I knew it was very important for the rest of the community to see, one of their women get a VP title in a technical role, right? So yeah, there we go. Say that answers the question.
No, I think that's great. I was just thinking of my younger cousin. She has a daughter, and what does she want to be for Halloween? And of course, she's screaming she wants to be a princess. And her
no, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So
my daughter had all the princess dresses. All of them.
So her mother has given her a princess dress that's huge and pink, and she has a doctor coat to go with it, and she is a doctor princess, because you can be both.
That's totally cool. But yeah, I actually have no problem with them being super into princesses. I actually have a picture of my daughter being in a princess dress coding on Scratch. Although I have to say I can't convince her to go into tech. Both mom and dad are in there. That's just too uncool. So other sciences, biosciences.
Actually, do everything that science goes well with anything. Because when I was young, I wanted to be a rap artist, scientist. So.
So it sounds like we are going through sort of the life cycle of how you get here. And so we've gone through how to inspire girls to stay in STEM. Telsha, the next question's for you as someone who is in academia at the moment. How have you experienced being in academia as a female in STEM, and how can academic institutions and research facilities like the one that you're at do better to help keep women in STEM?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of thought of 2 main things for this question of how can academic institutions better support women. I think one of them is really having people in leadership roles saying that it's a problem and that it's important. I think that's really important, and I think sometimes it can feel a little bit strange in some institutions if it feels that just people are saying this, but maybe there's still problems. It can feel a little bit Like there's some offset, but it's definitely so much better than no one saying it, you know? So I think that, and, you know, having some kind of obvious way to report things if something happens. I also think, I think having gone through the Perimeter Masters, they do this thing where they take like 20 students for this Masters, and they try to take 50% girls and 50% boys. And I think, like, on the face of it, that seems hard, but they get about 800 applications, so I think they don't find it hard to pick, like, very good students to do this. And I think, really, it makes such a big difference having just more women in an environment, like, even going from, like, you know, 5 or 10% to 20%. I think that makes a really big difference to the environment and the atmosphere. That was the big thing I thought of.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. I actually recently was on a call in law, of course, and the client parties joined, and it was a VP as well as a business associate. Both of them were female. The partner at Tories joined, who was also a female, and I joined the call, who obviously am a female. And it was so funny because the partner at Tories mentioned, I know it's strange to say, but we're all women. This is weird. And it was really nice because we just felt like such a community. And there are, if you look out for them, there are so many opportunities to meet with other women who are in your field. It sounds like you've done that as well, Telsha. Surround yourself with people in your field and found sort of a community there as well. That's wonderful. Okay, so Sherry, coming over to our tech mogul, in Dinah's words, you have been successful in leading various tech companies, and I wanted to ask you about what you think it takes in terms of characteristics in women to help them thrive in leadership positions in tech, and what's been your experience and how to nurture that in yourself and others?
This may sound really corny, but just be true to yourself. So, and as I said, pick your battles, but be your authentic self. Find out what that is. I'm not saying that we all know that all the time, and I think it does change over time too. My why has changed over my years, and I think that's just the evolution of and as you grow into your own self. But being authentic is very important, and showing vulnerability. I think we don't want to. I think we've been told not to as women when working with men. But I think your team really appreciates that you make mistakes. And you can say, I made a mistake. And we're not perfect. And that's another thing that I have to tell myself, I'm never going to be perfect, and why am I acting like I always am? And so I have to say, you know what? I made a mistake there. I shouldn't have said that, or shouldn't have reacted that way, or I shouldn't have done this. And so they go, oh, she can acknowledge when she's made a mistake. So I think that's very important with as being a leader. And then, of course, having passion. I think you need, as a leader, to be passionate about why you're there, your why. I think that goes back to I left Silicon Valley for that reason. I really found it toxic, and I had a pretty strong personality, and I could stand up to, it was the toxicity, but it wasn't just against women, it was against a lot of people. So it was minorities and all that. So I said, I want to be in a company, and I want to influence the company, the culture of the company, respect, and standing up for what's right. So I take that with my companies when building them. The team is to start with the why and then build from there. But it has to be something, especially being an entrepreneur and trying it again and again and again, is you really do have to love it because it's difficult at times. The other thing is being able to forgive, and I think that comes along with being vulnerable. You can forgive yourself, and you can forgive others. And the other one is not being afraid to ask for help. Again, I think that comes with being vulnerable. And the one is being decisive. I am very decisive, maybe to the point that some people think I'm making the decisions too quickly. We're never going to make a perfect decision. So that's another thing. I think, again, we have to tell ourselves. So those are the things I can think of, many, many more that a leader should have or would like to have. But I think those are the ones that I gravitate to, is to say, let's lead and let's be that team member that we never had when we were starting. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Definitely pay it forward is what I'm taking from that. So thank you so much for sharing. I think that one item that we also took away from that was that failure often leads to really wonderful successes, and maybe even successes that we didn't see coming. So I'd like to ask all the panelists maybe to expand upon how they've experienced failure as a part of their significant growth over their career, and how maybe the tech industry can better sort of allow for failure as a way to support innovation.
I think.
Yeah, Telsha?
Yeah, maybe this is more my perspective from, like, I guess in academia we're more like thinking about problems that no one solved before. But I think something I've definitely learned during my PhD is, I think, framing problems as, you know, I need to finish this by this time, and if I haven't done that, then I've like failed. I think I find that really unproductive for myself. Like, thinking about a problem that way is firstly not very fun, and secondly, I think, I don't know, if you're not like approaching it with some kind of curiosity and like joy, you're not gonna discover as much as you could. And I think for me anyway, I don't know how applicable this is to tech problems, but like thinking about problems more as like, I want to understand this thing, and if I find something that I wasn't expecting that means that it takes longer, that's still, you've learned something more about that problem, and that's valuable, and that should be like something interesting rather than something negative.
Absolutely.
Those,
yeah, I can definitely understand the perspective of being a task-oriented person, but also wanting to sort of foster curiosity. So I think what I'm taking away from that you really want to keep digging and allow yourself not to be capped, and you don't know where you might go when you start looking. Does anybody else have a story they'd like to share?
I was on a board of a publicly traded company many years ago, and they needed a CEO, so I stepped into that role. And about a year into it, I was fired. And the reason I was fired was because, and you could say that was a failure, I felt that way, but it was because I stood up and said, we're a publicly traded company, and I think the CFO's doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And I was the one who got fired. There's only men on the board, but we won't go into that part of it anyway. So the whole thing, though, is that failure is defined in many different ways, right? Failure in research, or not getting those results, or pushing yourself to do something that is really a push for you, and you don't achieve it, doesn't mean you're a failure, but we may define that. So I think that's a personal thing, that what we define as failure. I wasn't happy, but I also realized that I really wasn't a failure. I was standing up and, again, being authentic.
Wow, what a great story. Dinah?
One of the big mantras I had in any software development team that I was running, and especially at Arctic Wolf, was bad news fast. That was one of the biggest things, and it was part of one of our 5 pillars of kind of how we wanted to be as a software company. And the reason I would say that is because it's software. Something's going to go wrong. We're experimenting. We're doing new things. We don't know everything at the beginning. And if we have a problem if somebody's going to try and solve it in the corner by themselves, because then we can't maybe make the deadlines we need to make. But if you bring it up fast, it's not a problem. It's just something we have to solve, and it's expected. And I don't know that all dev teams are run that way, but I sure really like being part of the ones that are, because it really fosters this, innovation. And, I will never forget the day one of the devs walked out of the room and said, "Guys, I accidentally deleted half of production." And if you know, this is very bad. And the reaction in the office was, "Okay, how can we help?" There was no yelling, there was none of these things. And I think that's really important. Like, our lives are the same way. They're lives. They get messy. Our careers get messy. We're gonna try things, they're not gonna work. That's how we learn. And so we have to foster kind of that mentality inside of ourselves, which is not always easy. Granted, not always easy, but because that's how you learn and you grow and you do better.
Absolutely. I think it'd be really great if each of the panelists, since they're at different stages of their career and their lives, would tell us what their hopes are for women in STEM, what they hope to see coming forward, what innovations, what trends are exciting them.
I'll say, for me, I think I'm seeing more conversations happening around the need for women in STEM, as is this gathering here today. And I'm seeing more and more just women founders, women in leadership, and women also looking at unique problems that women face and being the innovation there, taking up space there. I'll speak a little bit to Select. I'm a co-founder of that. My co-founder is the mind behind an invention that's replacing how we do pap smears. And any women in the room who've been through that, this medieval-looking torture device that they use was developed by a man in the 1800s. And to think that we're in 2024 and we're still using those. So in my mind, it's like, she had the experience. She's like, why is this here? And took her her degree in nanotechnology engineering and found a solution to that. And we need to see more and more women in that space, with mammograms. I don't know why we're still doing those the way that we do right now, and just the birthing experience, right? And things like that. So I think, I'm excited about the trend we're seeing, and I hope that it continues that way so that we can see more and more problems that are faced by women being solved by women through innovation.
So, first of all, come on, that was an amazing. Seriously. We don't need to use those draconian tools anymore. Okay. So one of the things I've noticed with running Code Like a Girl, and what it is an online publication. It's run through Medium, which is an online blogging platform. And when I started it in 2016, most of the stories that we would get sent to us by authors were about being a woman in tech. What was it about, and what were the struggles, and all of that. And today, I would say maybe 5% of my articles are about that. And the super crazy, amazingly exciting thing is, 50% are technical articles. They're about building something with Python or doing something fun with AWS. I had an article we submitted today that we published, and a lady got her AWS certification by building a program in AWS to send her reminders to study with a couple slideshow pieces that she did. She went and built it in AWS to study for her AWS. It was very meta. I loved it. It's kind of Inception. But anyway, and then the other kind of 40% are about leadership, and not what it is like to be a woman in leadership, just how to be a good leader, how to do different things. And it's amazing. We have over 900 people who have published with us over the last 9 years. And we've had over 200 writers join in the last year. So it's really exciting. And just seeing that, what we're seeing now is we're seeing women do tech, not just talk about tech. That's a huge improvement.
That's powerful, yes. And I think it's so important to, with the science fairs and the robotic competitions and all of this, I think to allow young boys and young girls to explore. We talked about curiosity and letting them also fail. There's maybe a trend to not grade on grade papers and give grades to students. Life may not give you a grade, but you're going to fail. You're going to fail sometimes. So you're going to get an F, even if you don't have it on your report card. So the whole thing is about let's let the young people be curious. And what I'm so excited about, and what I'm seeing, and being in the cybersecurity and security area, is bringing together teams. Now, I know we're here to talk about STEM, and I do believe, because with my background and the doors it's opened for me, but we need curious people in all disciplines. And now we're looking at bringing in cybersecurity teams that are being put together are not just mathematicians and computer scientists and analysts. They are people who have degrees in art and have other interests. But again, I think it comes back to that curiosity, that passion about what you do. So I love it when programs allow you to have that flexibility, that the students have that flexibility. And I think that's what we need to continue to encourage. And I'm glad to see this happening from the panelists here. Thank you.
And
Yeah, I think I'm not really sure how quickly things are changing in academia. Maybe I also haven't been there for that long, so it's kind of hard to compare. But I think maybe just also from kind of a more personal thing, like I've been mentoring some masters and more like junior PhD students who are also women, and I'm really excited to see what they do. Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so I want to thank our panelists for joining us, being so candid with their experiences as well. I hope we all took away as much as I know I did. There'll be a question and answer period, I think, at the end. Right now? Okay. Does anybody have any questions in relation to the session? I see one at the back. How do I?
Cycle that happens. Oh, never mind. Should I repeat myself? Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name's Eden. I go by she, her pronouns. My undergraduate degree is in physics with a quantum computing background. So with my experience as a woman of color in STEM, my question is, how do we acknowledge and empower and then continuously break that barrier that women of color in STEM face when it comes to being very young and having that interest, and then continuing that journey of empowerment and breaking that barrier through high school, through university, through their professional career, because that is something that they have to resist against on an everyday basis. So what can people do, or what can support systems do to acknowledge that there is a gap and that there is a divide specifically towards women of color in STEM, and then how do we empower them? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any of the panelists want to jump in? You guys may all have different experiences to help out here.
I would say, like, I wouldn't say I have any direct answers because it's something that I'm still going through as a woman of color as well. I have experienced double layers. What I mean by double layer barriers, as in being a woman and being a woman of color in various parts of my career. And I think Cheryl talked about choosing your battles. I mean, there was a time where, in a leadership position, you just feel the egos in the room, and it's very hard to speak up sometimes, or lean into something when they're just seeing you through a particular lens. And so one thing I learned early on was, there are some times that not to just stay passive or stay back, but just choosing your battles, and also just being great at what you do, because I think irrespective of what you look like, people would always respect good work. And I'll say the other thing is surrounding yourself with people, or just having mentors in that space. That really helped me a lot. And I think someone mentioned it earlier, when you see, fighting for those titles because it's going to inspire someone else who looks like you in the company. But yeah, that's just me sharing from my experience so far.
So I can't comment about being a woman in color because I clearly am not. But what I can say is what the rest of us can do to help you. So when you're in, because this is, when you're in meetings, or you're in meetings with other people, women, people of color, maybe people just who are a little different and aren't fitting in and can't speak up, when they say something and somebody else takes it from them, you get to say, oh, just a moment, Cheryl said that already. Or you can pull it back and somebody starts talking over you. Another person in the room, like myself, might say, oh, hold on, I don't think she's finished her idea yet. Or somebody steals your idea from 2 minutes before. Oh, that's great. Maybe Cheryl can tell us more about that because she mentioned it earlier. So those are ways you can support, no matter who you are, what you look like, the other people in the room who are getting marginalized for whatever reason they might be getting marginalized.
I want to echo the words about mentorship. I still have mentors. So I have people that I go to. So I think that's very, very important to reach out. You may not find them right away. And when people ask me to be a mentor, I say, what are you needing to achieve? Is this something that you're going through right now, or are you looking for a long-term mentor, someone that you can check in? So it's about setting those expectations. But I think reaching out, because I think you need somebody to bounce this off of on a regular basis. So I think reaching out, and then also, as Diana said, is what can you do for others too? So being a mentor to them, to others that are going through what you're going through, you can learn from each other.
Yeah, I also really, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tasha.
I also really agree with what you were saying. I think it makes a big difference if someone who's, if there's some kind of social power thing, if someone who is also in a position of power pays more attention to someone, because I also think these things of like someone dismissing you often happen when they don't know you at all. And yeah, having someone who's in more of a position of power just also help you get past that, first 5 minutes of seeing that you actually have something to say. I think that's really helpful.
Anyone else have a question? Right there. In case it wasn't clear, this mic is much less fun. Please don't throw it.
Hello. Oh, it really is intense. My name is Sam Campbell. I use she, her pronouns. I actually find a lot of these events to be a little bit of a downer just because of the talk, and I want to leave really hyped. So I'm really curious, if I ask this question, what comes to mind? What's a moment you truly found joy in your careers, and what keeps you hyped to keep doing this fight?
Man, when we unicorned. Like, do you know how much work it was? Like, the whole company, like, everybody, like, on a daily basis. Like, we worked our butts off, and there was so much fun that we had, but we also worked so hard. And, you know, there's so, like, less than 1% of companies do that. So I think, like, it's really important to celebrate your success. You know, wherever that's, and it doesn't have to be that, like, I didn't do that by myself, obviously, but it was as a group when we did that. That was, man, that was sweet. That we bought a unicorn cake. My family bought me a unicorn cake. It was rainbow on the inside. It was great.
I actually was going to say, for me, I know I'm not a panelist, but I don't know if it was hitting 30. Dinah mentioned that when you get into your 30s, you just don't care anymore about what other people think of you. My moment of joy was my realization that I love being a nerd. I truly enjoy sitting in my office and just diving into research and writing a sentence 3 times because I don't like it in the legal document. And yeah, that maybe for some people that's not their fancy, but it was for me. And I think that I hit a moment in my life where I thought, you know what, I'm gonna own who I am, and that's my joy, I think, in my job. Anybody else want to share about their passions?
When, it's similar to this, when the company went IPO and then I realized what my stock options meant. It doesn't always have to be about money, but it does.
I'm going to add one more that's like totally a flip side of that. So I mentor people a lot. It's one of my biggest passions. And there's a person that I mentored for a year, and they had a really rocky start to their career. I started mentoring them right out of university, and they got to go back to this company that they loved, and then how the times are right now, they got let go. And they found a new job, and we just worked really hard at helping them find their spot at this new company. And they've only been there for 6 months. They're only a year out of school, and they've managed to impress the boss so much. And I got to get the message, that just said thank you for all the help, and like this book you told me to read, like that's really paying off, and this conversation you had with me about finding the hard problems to solve that nobody else is willing to solve, that's really helped. And for me, like that's like that it's an equal level joy to unicorning, like and so yeah. That is a really amazing part of my life too, when I get to see other people succeed, and maybe I just got to have a little part of that.
Yeah, and I think it's that to really drill down on this is that to see you want to take that role and be inspiring. So last week we had an event here, Women Funding Women event, and there was first-time angel investors talking, long-term angels talking. VCs speaking, and this young lady was here. She was working here, and she leaned over to me and she says, I have $10,000. Can I invest in one of these companies? And she said, this is so inspiring. I'm thinking, whoa,
Whoa,
yes.
That is a whoa.
Yeah. So that kind of thing, like, oh, it's working. We want to inspire this and see it work. So yes, that's a lot of like, wow, I'm very inspired to be inspired to have it been inspired or whatever, but it was good.
Conception of inspiration.
Yes.
It's very interesting. So like, I think for me, it's more, when I've always had this vision to want to, do something back home. I've lived in Canada for about 15 years, and, my heart just always goes back, and just being able to pull off a science fair like, science fairs like it's never been done back home was huge for me. And for me, it's like not just talking, being able to be on the entrepreneur journey myself as someone in STEM, and these kids can see that and see that, hey, like she's not just doing this thing, she's being it, right? And just also being able to be an artist with that, because music and arts is a huge thing there too, and being like, hey, you can be cool and still do this. Yeah, so like also like, and for me as well, like it's being, I've been in industry for about 10 years, and I've always wanted to start my own thing, and I think I started off this year with that mindset of wanting to do that, and we're in September now, and I've been at it since January, and just I think it was sometime last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm doing this. So yeah, definitely a big moment of joy there. Yeah.
Talsha?
Yeah, I think, yeah, for sure you can have bad conversations with people you haven't met, but I think something that I really enjoy is like having really good collaborations with people, and often they're men because most people in physics are men, but like having really, really good conversations where you feel really excited about the work that you're doing, and like there are a lot of also men who are really fun to collaborate with, so maybe that's also positive. Like,
hi, my name's Tessa Uez, and I work at the Accelerator Center. Kind of stemming from what you just said a little bit about being able to collaborate with men or people who don't identify as women. I'm thinking about the earlier statement about, the medical devices that were invented like 100 years ago for women or people who identify as women and need these procedures. And it's just abundantly clear to us how not okay it is that we are going through these things still. How have you been able to explain the importance of why it's not okay to men or people who don't identify as women, and actually in a way that gets their support? I find a lot of times these things can fall on deaf ears, or it's been done this way forever, there's no need. How do we get that support, or how have you found that you've been able to?
I'll say the big thing for me, I mean, I'm pretty early in the journey, but I mean, again, with the help of mentors who've gone ahead, is, hey, like you have daughters, you have wives, you should care about them. And, especially with like, raising and investment and that type of thing, where like it's a male dominated field, is being able to tap into that empathy and saying like, hey, like the world is at least 50% women, or AFAB women. And so, we should be caring about this. And, yeah, I mean, that's what I intend to do going into that, just from hearing from mentors and that type of thing.
I think you'd be shocked to find out like how many men care, and it's just getting their support to help push things forward too. One of the shocking things I found when Google Analytics was still allowed to be on the Medium platform, which I can't anymore. I don't know. They turned it off. But anyway, until they turned it off, I could see how many male versus female readers of Code Like a Girl that I had, and we were at 50%. 50% of our readers were men. Men wanting to know how to help, how to be allies, just not knowing how, and so they were reading our articles to figure it out. So as much as we get angry at the state of things, I do think there's a change happening, and I do think we have to tap those people that are 100% on our side.
That's really great to hear. Firstly, I guess I was kind of thinking, from my experience, trying to change someone's mind, even if they are kind of not, they don't seem like very kind of wedded to that idea that they have at the start, is really hard. Because it's somehow like all of these things that they grew up half hearing, and it takes a lot of energy. And I think if it's someone that you care about, or, that you want to do that time, I think that's really worth doing. But I also really feel this thing that you were saying of pick your battles. Like, I think it takes a lot of energy to do that. And I think to convince someone of something, you have to also really listen to what they're saying. And if what they're saying is something that you don't want to listen to, it takes a lot of emotional energy. And maybe you don't have to do that every time.
And also, it all comes down to the almighty dollar. So you convince them how they can make money by supporting us, they're going to do it.
But you have to be willing to walk away too, just about that. Because when I said I left Silicon Valley, that was the reason I left, was because of the management there just wouldn't move and wouldn't support almost anybody. But if you weren't white, no, you weren't going anywhere in the company. I mean, I was able to fight and claw myself up to it, but it wasn't easy for other people in the company. So sometimes you have to know when to walk away of a situation. I think they're talking about that, saying it's just too much to the battle. And I hate to say that because I'd like to stay in every battle and win every battle, but you're not going to. So sometimes you have to say, this person, unless you love them and you're with them all the time and you think you can just wear them down over time, then I would say just, there are allies out there. So keep looking for them.
Yeah, find them.
All right, well, thank you so much for attending. We'll be around, I think, afterwards if you have any additional questions, but I think it's been great.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your input and your thoughts. My goodness, it's a very functioning microphone now. Please join me one more time in giving a wonderful round of applause for our incredible panel. Before we let you guys enjoy some more snacks and drinks and fellowship, I have a few people that we need to thank. Events like these are made possible for a not-for-profit organization like the AAC because we have a wonderful network of corporate sponsors. We're very blessed to have 3 incredible partners this evening. So join me in giving a round of applause to our session sponsor, Profound Impact. The incredible team from Tories for providing all your lovely charcuterie cups and drinks. And the Catalyst Commons team for letting us use this beautiful space. Finally, you're going to come full circle with me now. You'll know why I asked you if it was your first time here. We do this once per quarter. In January, we hope to see all of you for your second She Talks Tech. It's going to be on a topic that we're really passionate about at the AC, and I know many of you will be as well. It's pay equity and transparency. So in January, on the 18th of January from 5 to 7 p.m., many of you, the 16th, oh, thank you, Megan, January 16th from 5 to 7 p.m. Some of you went on a lovely tour before you stopped in by us today. We're hoping to have that session in the new beautiful event space that's just down the hall, and we're going to pack that room full of people who are passionate about making pay equity and transparency happen for them and for their organizations. So we hope that you will join us for that. And with that, wish you a good evening. Please do stay for a little while, network, enjoy, and we'll see you next time.